guys, welcome to my channel where today I want to discuss the 3 things that you need to know as you begin your pillar making journey. Okay guys, so I guess the first thing that we should start with is defining what exactly a pillar candle is. Now I know some people, when they think of a pillar candle, they think of this typical structure, right? A nice cylindrical shape that, doesn't need a container, stands on its own. Got your nice little wick. So this is what I think most people think a typical pillar candle is, and they're not wrong. However, pillar candles can also look like this. This is my mushroom goddess candle. I think she's a cutie. So this is an example of a pillar candle, as well as this. Cute, right? So this is also a type of pillar candle. So basically, if we look at the full out definition of a pillar candle is a candle made from rigid wax so that it can stand alone without a container. And this clearly doesn't need a container. Okay, so now that you've fully decided that you want to commit to exploring the vast world of pillar candles, there are 3 things that you need to consider before you jump head or feet first into the pillar making journey. The first of which is the type of wax you're going to use. Okay, so there are many different waxes to choose from when you want to take the first steps into the pillar making process. I personally like to use a combination of beeswax and soy wax because I like the properties that the other ones don't have in each other, if that makes any sense. Like I like the softness and the malleability of soy wax, but I also like that luster and that hardness that beeswax lends to a candle. So I like the marriage of both of them. But that's my preferred wax or choice, waxes or wax choice. There's also pillar soy wax that you can use. I have never tried it, but I know that lots of people use it and seem to really enjoy it. There's also, if you just want to use plain beeswax, you could use that as well. Not my preferred, just because I don't like it doesn't mean that you won't like it and fall in love with it. There's also palm wax, which has its issues, and then there's also paraffin wax, which also has its issues. And both of those waxes could be self-contained videos of their own. So I'm not going to dive too much into that, but what I will say that whatever wax that you choose, make sure that it is specifically designed for pillar making. And then if you do try or decide to or try to use a blend of 2 different waxes, such as I do with my soy and bees, you need to make sure that it's at a ratio that will support a pillar candle. I love a 50-50 ratio, so 50 beeswax, 50 soy wax. I've tried a little bit more beeswax than soy and didn't really like it, and I've tried a little bit more soy than bee, and that turned out all right. But if you're shipping candles in the heat, you just want to be mindful that soy wax is the softer of the 2 waxes, so you just want to be careful with your ratios. All right, so you decided what kind of wax you want to use, and you decided that you're ready to go ahead and take your first steps into pillar making. The next thing that you have to consider is the type of mold that you want to use. The type of mold that you're going to pour your wax into to make it a beautiful pillar, right? Okay, so molds normally come in 3 different types of materials. So you have aluminum, you have plastic, and you have silicone. So first, let's start with aluminum molds. So this is an example of an aluminum mold, right? It's pretty hard, and this hole at the bottom that you see that's where your wick is going to go through. So you're going to thread your wick through there, and then pour your wax, and then that's how you make this. This is just your standard pillar. That's how you make that standard pillar candle. To be honest, aluminum is my least liked preference for candle molds, mainly because they're really hard to get out. Like once you pour that wax in, it's 50-50 if you're really gonna be able to get that candle out. If I'm being perfectly honest, at least get it out intact in one piece. The one good thing about aluminum molds is that it does come with that pre-centered wick hole, so you don't have to worry about trying to make sure that your wick is perfectly centered in your candle, because it's already done for you if it's manufactured correctly. And so what you do is that once you wick your candle, or even before you wick not the candle, but before you wick the mold, what you want to do is make sure that you have a lot of mold release spray, or some people use like vegetable oil to really coat the inside to help the wax, to help prevent the wax from sticking to the actual mold. And then you pour your wax in, and then once it solidifies and cools off enough, you should be able to pop that out. But I have not had the best of luck with that using aluminum molds. But if you try it, you may not have the same issues that I did. It might actually work out really well for you. So there's your aluminum mold example. All right, so next up we have plastic molds. Much like aluminum molds, a lot of these do come already with the wick centered for you, or the wick hole centered for you, and you just have to thread your wick through there, and it should be perfectly centered based off of the pre-made hole. And then it comes, this part is to help seal the candle. So as you can see, put the hole, place that on there, help seal the wax in. And then once again, just like the aluminum candle, you want to coat the inside with either a mold release spray, or some people use like a light coating of cooking oil, which I have not. I tend to use mold release spray for my plastic containers. Yeah, this one, plastic molds aren't the easiest to work with, but they aren't as hard as aluminum. You know, and some molds are easier to work with than others, but that's with anything, right? And the more you practice with them, the better you get at using them. So yeah, plastic molds, not as hard as aluminum, but not as easy as our next mold type, which is a silicone mold. All right, so next we have probably the most prevalent mold type on the market, and that is silicone molds. And they're prevalent on the market for a reason, primarily because their ease of use. As you can see, it's very flexible. You know, once you wick or thread your wick through the candle, or not the candle, but through the candle mold, and you pour your wax in, give it time to solidify and cool, it usually just pops out like that, no issue. And this one is fortunate enough to be pre-drilled as well, to let the user know that that's where your center of your wick should go. With that being said, one of the, I don't want to say downside, well, I guess it is a downside of most silicone molds on the market today is that they don't come with that center wick like already pre-pricked for you, so you can know where to place it. You'll have to actually, with a lot of the silicone molds, find the center yourself, which depending on how accurate you want to be, can really be a pain. And sometimes, even if it looks like you have the center mapped out perfectly on the outside, depending on the design that you're doing, once you actually look and take the candle out, you can see that sometimes it comes out off-center. But that's just one of the drawbacks of using silicone molds. Most of them don't come with that pre-pricked wick guide or wick hole in there. Another thing about using silicone molds that's kind of a downfall is, not a downfall, but a downside, is they can warp and deform relatively easily. So let's say like you make this candle and you make, I don't know, a few, and then you have no need to make any more in the immediate future. So you put it away in a storage bin or something, and let's say you place other molds on top of it as storage, or as part of the storage. What will happen is, you see that, like if you keep that pressure on that silicone mold, you will get a deformity in that mold, and then that never ever leads to a good candle when you try to use that mold again in the future. So just be mindful of that. What I will say is that some of the higher end silicone mold makers are aware that that is an issue when it comes to silicone molds. So they've created little shells. And actually, this is the mold for this candle. So that's the mold, and this is the candle. But anyways, so what higher end silicone mold manufacturers have discovered is that they'll make it. This one also comes pretty with the whole guide right here, which is also great. But they've addressed that issue by making these shells that go on the outside of the actual silicone mold, and then you put the rubber band around it to keep it tight, so you don't have to worry about any leakage or anything. And then that's how this particular mold keeps its shape, and you won't have to worry about deformation of the actual mold. Because once that mold is ruined, it's really hard to try to get it back to the original shape that you're going for. So there's that. All right, and the last thing that you probably should consider before you start diving in and getting all your supplies, and to be honest, it's probably the least sexy thing about candle making, and that is wicking or wicks. So you have basically, there are lots of wicks on the market that you can choose from. And there's some wicks that are paper cotton blend. There are some wicks that are just 100% cotton, which is what I use for my pillars. And then you've got hemp wicks. You've got wicks with zinc cores that have cotton on the outside, and that zinc core will help keep the wick rigid. But there's so many options and so many to choose from. And basically which wick you decide that you want to use or that you need really depends on the wax that you're going to end up using. Some waxes, like a thicker wick, like for instance palm wax, super dense wax, you're going to have to get a thicker wick if you want your palm candle to burn. Even beeswax, I've noticed in my own experimentation that if I just have 100% beeswax candle as opposed to the combination of the soy and the beeswax, generally I will need a thicker wick to compensate for the density of that beeswax as opposed to the combination blend, which the soy wax is a little softer, so you don't need as thick of a wick. All right, so just to show you some wick examples. So this is an example of a cotton and paper blended wick that's also pre-tabbed. I honestly never use these for my pillars, but I will use them for any container candle. Just switch up the size accordingly depending on the diameter of the container. But for the most part, these are only used for container candles. But that just because I use them for container candles doesn't mean that you are limited to that as well. You could definitely take these and thread them through a mold and use it as your wick. And then you have a nice little tab on the bottom of your candle. Now, so that's the cotton and paper blend. My preferred wick choice is just a pure 100% cotton that comes on a little spool like so. I like to write the size of mine on top so I can just look down and grab and know which one that I'm grabbing. They do come in different sizes. This is probably like a standard size for me in my candle, the types of candles that I make in my little line of candles. I probably use this size for about 90 to 95% of the candles that I make. And it's 100% cotton. The pros of that, you don't have to worry about like when you burn it, like, you know, putting anything weird in the air as you burn. So I guess environmentally friendly on that side. And it's also pretty cost effective in the sense that you can literally make hundreds of candles depending on the size of the candles from a spool like this. Downside to having a 100% cotton wick is that there is no inner cord. And what the inner cord normally does with the wick is keep the wick upright. So when you're using the 100% cotton wick, what normally happens is as the candle or the wick starts to burn, it will curl over. Because there's nothing on the inside that's holding that wick straight, like straight up in the air. So it will curl over. I haven't had an issue with like candle burning with a 100% cotton wick. There's never been an issue with that, especially if you keep your wicks trimmed. I haven't had an issue. I haven't had anybody say they've had an issue with it either. So it's my preferred choice. Alright, so you've decided which wax you're going to use. You've decided which molds you're going to use. You've theoretically decided which choice of wick you want to use. And then now you're ready to put it all together and see what you create, right? So I think the overarching thing to consider, even when you're looking at those, the wax, the container, and the wick, is that you want to test everything. Test. So you want to make sure if you're using a combination of waxes to make sure your ratios are good. Even if you're not using a combination of waxes, you want to make sure that your wicks that you have decided to try out are burning efficiently. You can actually do a whole video on wicks, and that would be a very detailed video. It's a lot that goes into wicks. Like I said, surprisingly, that little thing can make a big difference in the quality of your candle, believe it or not. So I suggest make your candle, pick a wick that you think will work for you and your candle type. What I will say also about wicks is that they manufacturers will have like a guide that will tell you, okay, well, you need this size wick for this diameter candle, whether it be 3 inch, 2 inch, whatever. They'll give you a guide. But with that being said, I would just consider that a guide, because there are many things that can determine whether or not your candle will burn properly. The main thing being the type of wax you use. So just keep that in mind. And then also, when it comes to burning things efficiently, is burning your candles efficiently, you also want to factor in if you want to use something like a fragrance oil or an essential oil, or if you want to put color in. All those things have an effect on how your candle is going to end up burning and performing in the long run. So that's why I say, even if you think you have a formula down pat, always test. If you're going to throw in a new factor or something, let's say you've made nothing but 3 inch diameter white candles. By white, I mean no color, because when wax hardens, it normally solidifies and it turns white. So you have a colorless 2 inch candle, and all of a sudden you want to make it pink. Okay, you're going to definitely need to test that to make sure that it burns correctly when you light it. Especially if you plan on selling your pillars, you really want to make sure it burns correctly before you release it to the world. Yeah. So I mean, I guess that's it. 101 of pillar making: wax, mold, and wicks. Let me know if you found this information helpful by commenting below. Always like, share, and subscribe if you found this information valuable. And if you are working on something, and let's say that you are stuck on something or you need help troubleshooting something with like one of your candles, just comment below and we can try to troubleshoot that together. I'm not saying that I'll have the answer to whatever you're having an issue with. I can try to help. And something else to consider, I guess I should have said this before I close out the video, but something else to consider are environmental factors. Believe it or not, that can actually play a role in how your finished candle, I should say, performs. Even trying to get it out of the mold, if you, like the humidity, that plays a role. The air temperature can play a role. I mean, just things you never even think about can actually factor into how A, you get your candle out of the mold, and then B, how that performs, like when you burn it. That's, but don't worry about that. Cross those bridges if and when you get to them. But anyway, that's all I got for today. I'll probably come back with a video actually showing the step-by-step of how I make the pillar. Probably the simplest pillar ever. It's a small little 2-inch pillar, no color, no scent. And it'll probably be a plastic one, just because I think we should start off with, showing something that's not super easy like silicone, but not super hard like aluminum. So, I don't know, we'll see. But until then, see you in the next one. So one thing that I forgot to mention, you gotta cover that up. So like with your plastic and your aluminum molds, once you get that wick through there, you have to seal that up so all of your wax doesn't spill out. So I use, I think it's like wall putty, the little tacky stuff. I have to insert a picture of it somewhere when I try to edit this. But you just place that on top of the wick that's already through the hole, and put the little putty on top, and your wax won't leak out. So, sorry, I forgot to mention that when I was talking about molds. But that's it.